How many of you guys have heard my testimony before? Okay, thanks. Oh, well, okay, for those of you that hadn't heard it, just a little bit about it before. I could not tell my entire testimony before because I honored my wife. She asked me to leave a few things of my testimony out because it embarrassed her. Not anything that was awful to me, but it's something that actually will fill in some of the blanks for some of you guys that have heard my testimony before. It will help you to understand where I was coming from and how I became what I became up until the point. So this is not my life story. This is not how I came to Jesus. This is my testimony of when I was 15, I was saved. I got saved when I was 15 at the Freddie Gage Crusade. Travis, Sean, my buddies back there, all of them got saved. I think, are y'all backslid or y'all still saved? I think they're still saved. So yeah, we got saved. 15 years old. We're on fire for God. Believed everything that the guys up there had to say. We studied the Bible. We did everything they said. We got baptized. We did everything we were supposed to do. Everything right. Continued into the Word. I loved God. I loved God with all my heart. I paid tithes, gave offerings, was at church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Christy and I followed that. Now there were times that God called us to different churches at different times for different things. We didn't continue the whole 35 years here. God moved us and we went with the leading of the Lord. But each time that we went somewhere, I always had whoever was up there preaching, I believed him. I believed everything they said. And matter of fact, I got so good at it, I could tell you what was wrong with you if you had a problem because I knew the Bible so well. I knew all you had to do was this, and then you could get, you would get your answer. I was so self-righteous. I had no idea that I was self-righteous. I thought that I was doing God's will, even though I wasn't doing God's will, but I felt like I was doing God's will because I was following the law, paying tithes, and going to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, helping widows, elderly people, everything. It's just what I did. It's just who I was. And then a snag came in there about 2006, 2007. I was praying, and all of a sudden, heaven just closed. I knew it had to be something about me. It couldn't be God. It had to be something I was doing. But I was praying and I couldn't hear anything from heaven. But I was in business for myself. I was a general contractor and I was building houses, and they had been flying off the 2004, 2005, 2006. I was building houses, making money, doing great. Christy and I had a pretty good little nest egg up. It was fine. But then when I couldn't hear from God, I still thought, well, okay, God's just want me to use my faith. And so my faith is I'm going to continue to build these houses. And so I had 3 houses that I was building at the time and still lived in my house. So I paid 4 house payments for 3 years, and the houses weren't selling. And I still was praying, God, tell me what you want me to do. Do I need to lower the price? What do I need to do? It's the first time I've ever been confused. I've always known your will. I've known what you wanted me to do. How is this? What is happening here? Why are you not talking to me? Why are you not saying anything to me? There should be something. I deserve something. Tell me something. And still nothing. Nothing. Well, there's a huge toll that you pay when you have 4 house payments for 3 years. And so, but it was time for Christy and I to sell our house because we would build and live in a house 3 years and sell. So that was kind of our, and we still had some money saved up, and so we put our house on the market. And let me qualify this: the word Christian. Everybody, when I just say the word Christian, everybody in here has a different idea as to what that word means. So I'm going to use that word Christian, but just know it's a person who believes they're doing the right thing, even if they're not doing the right thing, but they believe that they are following God as closely as they can at the time. See, none of us in here are at the exact same place with God. None of us. I mean, you know, Pastor Rhonda still has a lot of prayer to get up to my spirituality, you know. But I pray for you, Pastor, you know, so. I don't know why that was funny for so many people. But we're all in different places, and we all have to be met in different places. Well, what happened to me was this. Actually, my house went under contract with a Christian pastor, and I was excited. Okay, this is it. This is the answer to prayer. Even though God hasn't physically answered me, this is my answer, Pastor Tim. I'm going to sell this house. We're going on. You know, it's just going to go on and kick on, keep on going on and on. And so 3 days before closing, that pastor's agent said, hey, he can't close because he was going to use his home equity line of credit as a down payment, and he found out he couldn't do that. And Christy was like, well, what are we going to do? Because we had taken the rest of our savings and we had put it into one of those 3 houses that we had built to finish it up because we were going to move into it. And I said, honey, you just watch. God is going to do a miracle here for us. This is going to be awesome. God will show himself strong. But if I don't auction this house, we're going to start missing payments. So I need to auction this house. I called a friend of mine, Terry Posey. I said, hey, I need to auction the house because if not, I'm going to start missing payments. Now, I wasn't late on any of my bills. I didn't have people calling me, telling me I was, you know, hey, when are you going to make a payment? I wasn't late. But the reason we had to auction the house, the man that was the reason that we had to auction the house came back and bought the house at auction $60,000 cheaper. Christy said, that's cruel. That's the most cruel thing. But what that got me started thinking was, how can that not be a blessing to him? Because it's what he said. God didn't want me to buy the house because he knew I was going to get it for $60,000 cheaper. And I couldn't argue with that. It makes sense. If it would have happened to me, I would have said the same thing. I would have said the exact same thing. And I'd been listening to all these different preachers who were telling me, hey, go to church, do this. God's got you. You know, if you, and I'm paraphrasing, but I felt like if I followed God, nothing bad was ever going to happen in my life. King David said that he's lived a long time and he's never seen God's seed begging for bread. He's lucky that he never met me because it came to a point to where I was begging for bread when I got to that point. And it's got to be me. Now, we closed the deal, but I didn't have any money. Still had 3 houses. And I was also a real estate agent. Had 15 closings, 15 houses under contract, 15 closings that year, 2009. that fell through because of financing, because the banking regulations, everything was changing at that time. I was, yeah, I couldn't really tell you what I was. It had to be me. It couldn't be God. Maybe I'm in the wrong religion. Maybe not religion, the wrong denomination. Maybe if I study, and I studied. Maybe I need to start going to church on Saturday. Maybe that's the right thing, because I've heard people tell me that I need to go to church on the Sabbath day. Maybe that's it. Or maybe I need to follow Joseph Smith. He's wrote this other book, the Book of Mormon, and maybe I need to check that out and see what that is. Or maybe I need to become a witness and go to the Kingdom Hall. Those guys have a great ministry. They come knock on your door, and I don't know. You know what you get if you see that? I don't even have to finish a joke. You know what you get when you cross a Jehovah's Witness with an atheist? Someone who knocks on your door for no particular reason. It had to be, that's hilarious to me. Pastor Hank told me that joke, and I wanted to see how good it went over before I gave him credit for it. I saw there was a consistency. There was a theme throughout all of those different denominations, and it just so happened that every one of those denominations were the true church. And so the way they kept you being the true church was they said, don't get out of our little shell here. Don't read for yourself. Just, if you feel like you need to read something, read this. But don't go over there. Those people, they're not going to make it. And so it was the hypocrisy of the different churches that I was going to that made me say, this is not the real thing. So maybe I need to go to different religions. So I started studying world religions, and I looked through, and there's over 1,000 different world religions. I did not go to 1,000 different world religions, but I started looking, and I noticed the same similar themes in those religions that I had in Christianity that were also included in the denominations everything just little tweaks, just little bitty tweaks, just little bitty things. And I still wasn't hearing from God. I was still praying. Now I was late on bills. I was late and people were calling me, and I'm like, God, tell me if you want me to bankrupt, I will bankrupt. Just tell me if you want me to, and I will. I don't care. I know that I never thought I would ever have to bankrupt, and I know that I've always been a man of integrity, and if I said I was going to do it, I would do it. But now there is no way I can keep my promises to everybody. And still nothing. Still nothing. Nothing. Bankruptcy, I had to take bankruptcy. It was harder for me to tell Christy that, because she was the one that had trusted me, that had believed in me for taking care of our finances. And she stayed with me. She stayed with me through the bankruptcy. She was like, if that's what we have to do, it's what we have to do. We'll eat peanuts and crackers and whatever we have to do to make it. That's what we'll do. So I did. I bankrupted. And I was ashamed of that because I didn't have a direction, and I never knew that it was a business tool, bankruptcy. There is no shame in bankruptcy except the shame that you put on yourself. I used to think people that bankrupted were just people that they just wanted to go and spend a bunch of money and misuse their funds and get more credit than they could pay back. But it wasn't the truth. I had a family. I tried to do everything that I could, but it was to the point that I wasn't hearing from God. And the last prayer that I was ever going to pray, I prayed, I said, God, it's just like you don't exist. Everything that I've prayed for, everything that's happening to me, everything that I have believed those guys that said to me is not happening. I would expect this exact same result if you did not exist. It's just like it. So until you bring me a little wooden cross, I'm going to have to say I'm an atheist. Hey, George, you hadn't missed nothing much. I'm just now becoming an atheist. And I'm going to have to say that I'm an atheist because it's not happening. And I still, nothing, didn't hear anything from God. But now I thought I had really laid down a gauntlet that God was going to be like, oh, wait, Chuck's he's making a threat. He laid down a fleece. We need to get some cross down there to him. Anybody can bring him a little wooden cross. Let's do it. But I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want I did not want that to get out. I didn't tell Christy. I didn't tell anybody. I told them, nope. If God's real, I laid a fleece before him. And if he's real, he knows what it is and he can do it at any time. And it was just so hilarious to hear people, oh, what would you ask for $1 million? And I'm like, no. Is that what you would have done? Oh, no, I don't. No, I believe in God. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah. But, and it was funny. And I loved, y'all probably don't know this about me, but I used to be obnoxious. It was a long time ago. But I love to argue. I love to fight. And I opened the Bible and I looked at it a different way as an atheist than I ever looked at it as a Christian, because now I'm looking at it as, hey, maybe this thing is wrong, and maybe I can find out where I went wrong, and I can prove to other people, and I can proselytize other people, and I can make them atheists. And I joined an atheist group, and we had meetings like this. The only thing is, at the end of the meeting, we didn't say, hey, come down to the front, and nobody's going to pray for you, and nothing's going to happen. So it was hard to recruit because we didn't offer anything. That still cracks me up when I say that. 99% of people, and I don't blame them because I would have been one of those 99% before it had happened to me. 99% of Christians shunned me and ignored me and fought with me and told me I was going to hell, told me it was me, that it wasn't God, and that I shouldn't lay a fleece before God, and that who am I to ask God for a fleece? And I really, and I'm the kind of person, I'm humble. I take a lot of pride in my humility. I really do. And thank you, Pastor, that you got that. That's but I love to be a polemic. I love to argue. I love to fight. And so that's what I did. But I had 3 ministers in Bradley County that stayed with me that would call me, and for no reason. They would just call me. Now, Pastor Hank called me. He was one of my big, and he never bothered me about being an atheist. A lot of times he would call me and not even talk about God. It was me bringing it up because that's all I wanted to talk about, because his first name was Pastor, and so I wanted to talk about God. He called me one time and he said, Chuck, he said, I have great news. I've been studying the Word and I've got great news for you. And I said, all right, what is it, Pastor? He said, there are no atheists in hell. I said, "Oh, really? Well, what made you come to that conclusion?" He said, "Because when they open their eyes in hell, they're believers then." No, I didn't think it was funny at the time. He and we had several jokes, and you guys have heard the jokes that but now he could say those to me because he loved me. He called me. We went to coffee. We didn't talk about, and one thing I admired the most about Pastor Hank Davis is he could say 3 words that was darn near impossible. I almost cussed, Pastor. I apologize. It was darn near impossible for anyone else to say. And those 3 words were, "I don't know." And that was the most honest answer that I could get from people. I would, well, if there is a God, then why is this happening? I don't know. Well, you don't know, but you still believe? Well, yeah. I said, well, Pastor, you got to understand, God does not exist. He said, yeah, I don't have any problem with that. And I said, wait a minute, Pastor Hank, you got to understand. Maybe you didn't hear me. I said, God does not exist. He said, yeah, I don't have any problem with that, Chuck. I don't have any problem with that. And I said, well, why don't you have any problem with that? I was wanting to argue about it. He said, because I'm telling you, God is not bound by time, and exist is a time word. So if you find yourself in a place that doesn't exist, God is going to be there waiting on you at that point. And that blew my mind because I had always thought of God being out of time, but bound by time. Now, you'll never hear a preacher say God both does and doesn't exist, but it's the truth. He's outside of time. He is beyond existence, and he's love. And so I fast forward to Christy had married a Christian. Matter of fact, Pastor Hank married us, and she had married a Christian man. I was no longer a Christian. I was an atheist. And so we fought like cats and dogs, or husbands and wives even. And I left her. She didn't leave me. I left her because I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take. She would pray for me, and I would say, stop praying for me. Pray that my fleece is answered. Don't pray for me. She said, Chuck, it's God is burdening me to pray for you, not for an answer for your fleece. And it made me so mad because she wouldn't do what I told her to. I've heard women are like that. I'm going to get back over here where it's safe. And so I left her, and I moved into a little 1-bedroom studio apartment, Park Oaks Apartments. Thank you. Were you over there? Park Oaks Apartments is where I moved, a little 1-bedroom studio by myself. And I had actually even forgotten. Let me tell you this story first real quick before I get to that, because this is something that's hilarious. We had moved into a neighborhood, and I'm not going to tell you which one, but it's surrounded by church people of the once saved, always saved persuasion. And there was a pastor who was a quadriplegic. He had had a car wreck, but he had been a minister up to all this time. He lived directly across the street from me. I was an atheist, but he had this big, huge ditch that went all the way down the side of his property that fed into the pond for the entire subdivision. And it was so funny because I would talk to people that were the Christian people, and they're like, man, that guy needs to do something about that. He paid a guy to mow his yard, but the guy was too lazy. It was too wet to always mow, and he didn't want to weed eat it. So one day I was out, just got finished mowing my yard, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go weed eat that. It wasn't that I was going to weed eat it to prove that atheism was some kind of better philosophy than Christianity. It wasn't that. It was that the guy was a quadriplegic, and I would a whole lot rather be weed eating this man's ditch as being a quadriplegic, having to hope somebody would do this for me. And he couldn't pay me. So the first time it took 2 hours. The second time it took me about an hour and 10 minutes to do it. The third time it took about 45 minutes. After the third time that I weed eated his yard for free, or his ditch for free, all of the Christian men and women got together and they bought tiles, filled it in with rock, made it where you could mow over it, and they did all that, and they were like, hey, yeah, that's... So even God can use atheists to let Christians wake up, because a lot of times we can actually get so self-absorbed at how things are affecting us that we forget. I mean, the man was a quadriplegic, so he couldn't do it. Okay, so back to where I was. So I moved into this one-bedroom studio apartment, and I'd even forgotten about the fleece. This is 4 years later. I wasn't thinking about it. Nothing was in my mind. I was asleep, and I just felt like get up. Kind of like I didn't hear get up. It wasn't one of those spiritual woo-woo get up. It was more like, hey, did you turn that? Did you unplug something? And I just got up, and I looked over, and there's this utility closet, and I knew it had the return heating and air conditioning in it because it had the louvered things in the door. They're older apartments, and so I opened the door, and I reached, and it had the interior heating and air conditioning unit in it, and so I reached back in there, and I started feeling around, and I pulled out a little wooden cross. A wooden cross. And I fell to my knees and I said, you are real. You are real. I was expecting somebody to bring me a wooden cross. But you brought this to me. I can't tell you if it was 5 minutes or 5 hours or how long it was that I was in his presence, but it was like a wave of love, pure love. I hate that I don't have the words for this. I can say it in tongues, but I can't say it in English. The waves that just started coming over my feet and started just enveloping me. I remember I could see. I looked at my hands, and I could see every cell in my hand. I could see entirely the whole. And people have told me it's the Shekinah glory. It's Holy Spirit. I don't care what it was. It was awesome. Whatever it was, I can't name what it was, but I knew it was God. And every question that I had about, well, why did this not, or why did that? Even before I could think the question, the answers came, and I understood. Oh, okay. I had made an idol out of what the people had said God was. He was my genie. I knew how to push his buttons to get what I needed for my life. So I wasn't really serving him. I was just using him as a vending machine to get what I wanted, and that's what God wanted to get rid of. That impersonation that I had, that impression I had of him in my mind. That was the whole reason that God had allowed me to be an atheist for 4 years. Was just for this moment, and the water came up and it engulfed me, and I was in the water. I was in it top to bottom 100%, and it was so strong, and it was love I'd never felt before, and I haven't felt it since. But it was so strong that I knew my body couldn't take it, and I said, Lord, either take me on or you're going to have to back off, because my body cannot take this much love. And just as gentlemanly as the waters, and it wasn't waters, it was, and it wasn't smoke, and it wasn't, I can't explain what it was, but as gently as it came, it left. But it changed my life. And I told Christy, I said, of course, this was the next day. I told Christy, I said, hey, I got an answer to my fleece. And she was like, okay, good, and hung up on me. And she didn't even ask me what my fleece was. For some reason, she was a little bit upset with me. But I understood that. And I understood that even if we were never to get together again, that I understood that I was going to be okay. I knew that I was going to be okay. It was going to be all right. And I was taking Gracie, my baby girl that has me a grandchild. I was taking her to a basketball game, and I told her at the basketball game, or headed to the basketball game, I said, honey, I said, God answered my fleece. She said, what was it, Daddy? I said, I asked God to bring me a little wooden cross, and he brought one to me. And she was like, is that all? And I said, yeah, that's all. That's all I was wanting. And she was like, that's awesome. So we go to the basketball game, and a good friend of mine, Chris Brooks, he was a youth minister. And he found me. He was one of the guys that would find me to talk to me. He found me, and he said, listen, man, I was praying today, and God told me to give you this. And he said, and you've got to take it. I know you're an atheist, but you've got to take it. And it was a wooden cross that was made by an orphan girl from a different country who had been sex trafficked and had learned about the love of Christ and the love of God. And she wrote on there Psalms 91, he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And I just picked up that cross, and I showed it to Gracie. And Gracie's a cheerleader. She was a cheerleader, and she started crying, and I started crying. And we didn't have a good basketball team anyway, because it was and so the other team, they were like, hey, they're taking this pretty seriously, because pretty soon, it went, and we were all crying. So that's two crosses that I got. But then about a month later, I was in Dayton, and there was a man that I was appraising his house. He said, hey, you appraise, how many counties do you appraise? And I said, 7, 8 counties, 6, 7, 8 counties. I don't remember what I told him at the time. And he said, well, maybe you can help me with something. And I said, what is it? And he said, well, ever since I retired, God has told me to do something, and I just do it. He said, it's just a ministry that God told me. It's the only thing I can do. And he reached down into a box, and he pulled out a handful of little wooden crosses. And he said, God told me to start making one cross a day. And I have consistently ever since I retired. He said, sometimes I make 50 crosses. Sometimes I only make one cross. Sometimes I'll make 500. But I always give them out. I always keep a few in my pocket just to give out to people. And he said, I don't know what you would say, but you can, if you can help me with this, you can give these crosses out. Well, I started crying, and I told him the story. And the same month of the same year that I prayed that prayer for a little wooden cross, God laid it on his heart to start making a cross a day, every day. I believe it was the exact same day that I prayed the prayer, but I can't prove that. I can prove everything else that I've told you. I can physically prove that. It's a truth. It's true. It's a true story. And now I want you to know that this cross, there's nothing magical about having a cross like this. But this cross was an answer to a prayer of an atheist. And God said, once you're in my hand, no man can pluck you out. Not even yourself, you can't pluck yourself out of my hand. You haven't chosen me, Matt Decker, but I've chosen you and ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit and that your fruit should remain. This was the concept, and this is the part of my life that I am stopping at now. But I want you to know that I haven't just been skipping around and nothing bad ever happened to me since then. This is when I learned that I can trust God without ever having to have. I didn't have faith. There are many crowns talked about that we're going to lay at Jesus' feet. One of those is the crown of faith. I won't have that crown because I lost my faith. I won't have that crown. There is a price that you pay when you become an atheist. And I recommend to every one of you, I hear preachers tell you, oh, yeah, if you tell an atheist this, you're going to get him saved, or boy, you'll get him with that, or you'll do that. Don't do that. That's just a person that is at a different place in their walk. And don't speak for God. Don't speak for God. Let God speak for God. Just love them. That's all these pastors did for me. They just loved me. They couldn't answer my prayer. They never asked me what my fleece was. They just loved me, and that all that together brought me back into the fold. Now, I promised God that I would do this every time I give this testimony. I have these crosses that each one of you that feel led, you can come up and you can take one of these crosses. I have plenty of them. And take these crosses and keep them and just look at them as a reminder of an answered prayer, as a reminder that even when 99% of Christians give up on you, God's not afraid. He wasn't terrified. God had those crosses waiting on me. He made me one a day, every day, just to show off. Not only did he give me my answer, but he gave me enough crosses to give to everybody I give this testimony to. So I'm going to turn this back over to Pastor Rhonda, and I'm going to let you guys come up and pick your cross that you want. And it doesn't matter. The cross is not an idol. Don't think that you can rub it 3 times and a genie will appear, because it won't. But keep it in your pocket and rub it. And I mean, I've had testimonies of people that they've had the cross in their pocket and they've rubbed it, and it has kept them from cussing people out. And so, okay, it was me. I had the cross in my pocket, but it was still my testimony, Pastor.